Thank you very much indeed. Good morning, everybody. I just have one slide for you. That's all you're getting. Just something to look at, and really good to take part in today. An honour to be here to listen, as well as to try and make a contribution, and I look forward to learning. So this famous Earthrise picture has been in the news again this weekend. The picture was taken on Christmas Eve 1968 by William Anders and the crew of Apollo 8. And I'm old enough to remember watching the Apollo missions live on television at my primary school. The picture is the first ever view of planet Earth from the perspective of the moon. And it's in the news because of the Artemis 2 rocket began rolling out towards its launch pad. And that will be the first flight around the moon for 50 years, manned flight around the moon, person flight around the moon. It's launching a new era of space exploration, but I think it's a good metaphor for human exploration in the 20th century in this respect, in that every act of radical human exploration offers fresh perspective on what it means to be human. Science leads us to develop new technologies which affect our lives, as technology has always affected human life, from the wheel to agriculture to fire to the printing press to electricity. And the new questions require careful navigation and raise ethical questions, some more than others. But the act of exploration always offers new perspectives on what it means to be human, symbolized by this picture of the Earth seen from the moon. We discover in this picture that we are not, in a physical sense, the center of the universe, and we discover that in a new way. And this, in turn, raises new questions for faith communities and for faith. Amal Rajan, the broadcaster, sums up where he thinks we are in terms of technology in a rapidly changing landscape in the introduction to one of his podcasts a few weeks ago. I quote, "Perhaps the greatest question of our age is whether the Promethean technology now loosed upon the world augments and improves what it is to be human, or on the contrary, downgrades and damages our species, undermining our minds, our childhoods, and the bonds between us on the way. This, rather than existential wipeout, is the danger we need to be alert to." I found that a very helpful summary of the question. Like the other speakers today, I've been engaged in the world of AI for about a decade through my work in the House of Lords. For those who may not know, 26 Anglican bishops historically sit in the House of Lords as Lords Spiritual, and it's my privilege to be one of them. And in that capacity, I've been part of the AI all-party parliamentary group, select committees, part of the government's Centre for Data Ethics and Innovation for a few years, and part of a group of peers who helped strengthen the Online Safety Act. Colleagues used to regard my interest in AI and robotics as niche, if not eccentric, a decade ago. And if I gave a talk about AI 6 or 7 years ago, I'd spend maybe 80 or 90% of the time trying to explain, on my limited understanding, what it is and why it's important. But the last few years have seen a shift to a much more liquid landscape in popular discourse and experience. So there's an almost universal recognition now that we are all facing both types of questions exposed by radical exploration and new technology. There's a host of ethical questions around the use and deployment of AI on the one hand, but also new existential questions about what it means to be human on the other. So let me sketch 4 developments as I see them, which are changing the landscape, and I think bringing us to an inflection point in this debate, raising the urgency of the dialogue and the kind of conversation we're engaged in today. This is a liquid and rapidly evolving landscape, And it can be described, of course, in a number of different ways, and no doubt will be today. The first is the continued development of the technology at an accelerating pace, which is a consequence in turn of massive financial investment. Over the last year and currently, we've seen AI tools breaking through into everyday use through such features as ChatGPT, Microsoft Copilot, and the Google search engine. And that is relatively recent, although ChatGPT has been around for a number of years. The incorporation into the software that my colleagues who I work with in the diocese use every day is absolutely brand new, and most of the organizations we're involved in don't have policies to respond to that. So the ethical questions about how to use the technology have gone from being a concern for a small number of pioneers in every industry to being universal in a very short period of time. In 2019, the Center for Data Ethics was asked for advice on the use of algorithms in predictive policing by a single police force. This was pioneering work, although widely open to accusations of bias. But police forces are now reckoning with questions of AI, not only in predictive policing, but in the use of facial recognition technology, and most recently research and confirmation bias questions and AI hallucination, impacting everyday lives of chief constables and those who work with them. And this means faith communities need to be able to offer informed guidance on AI to their own members and practitioners who find this technology intruding into daily life in a number of different ways. Where are we to source that guidance and ensure consistency with existing ethics in our various traditions? And how do we take counsel together and find common ground in this endeavor, which is why I think this project is so important. The second development, first is the rise of technology, is the rising public awareness of AI, which regards these developments as on the one hand remarkable and holding the prospect of significant benefit and change, but on the other holds serious consequences for society and individuals. Two contrasting examples. A couple of weeks ago, I watched the new Deep Mind film, The Thinking Game. I don't know how many people have seen it. Focusing on the remarkable story of Demis Habasis and the new developments in protein folding, which have emerged through Deep Mind. The film has had 299 million views on YouTube in its first month globally, which is remarkable. It's a very persuasive piece of filming, and not surprisingly, it focuses on the tremendous benefits of AI for medicine, for science, and the real breakthroughs now taking place. By contrast, over the last couple of weeks, I've become involved in commenting publicly on the question of nudification apps, deepfakes, and the new capabilities of X and Grok. Faith communities need to be prepared and resourced for all of these kinds of questions around the future of society and the future of work. And we need to bring the insights of our traditions into the debate and push back against the often naive and unformed value systems which are guiding some of the tech companies. So AI in faith communities as elsewhere will need to become not the province of a handful of specialists or pioneers, but a much more general expertise. In terms of my own Church of England, we no longer need a single bishop leading on AI questions, but we will need every bishop and the majority of parish clergy to be equipped for dialogue in this space. That's a considerable formational challenge for all of our communities as we seek to equip people for a changing world. The third development, we're observing a complex interplay between governments and technology companies, which again is liquid and shifting continually. Sometimes it seems as though governments are doing exactly what technology companies want them to do, and technology companies are, of course, investing a great deal of money to that end. And sometimes it can feel as though government is pushing back and discovering its power to regulate. The landscape is continually shifting. In opposition, the Labour Party in the UK talked about the need for a new AI bill to strengthen regulation. There's been no sign of it so far, and our latest intelligence is it won't be in the next King's Speech. The advent of President Trump's second term has introduced a new caution in the UK government around the regulation of technology. How are we as faith communities able together to influence and shape this debate so that the benefits of AI do not have consequential harms to citizens? But then, for the first time, I think, over the last couple of weeks, we're seeing a strong and determined pushback from government to X and Grok over nudification apps and deepfakes. The language used by the Prime Minister and the Secretary of State in their initial reaction was extremely strong, rightly. The action was determined that they then took in provoking Ofcom to open an investigation and to bring forward new powers. In consequence, X withdrew the facility from its app on Thursday. It remains to be seen how and when it will come back, and whether the government maintains its firm line. The House of Lords will debate tomorrow an amendment to the Children's Wellbeing Bill, which aims to outlaw social media for under 16s. And in response, a consultation was announced by government overnight into what to do about that. And fourth, we're seeing the realistic prospect of general AI within the lifetimes of people now working in the field. Opinions vary, of course, about the timetable for this, but it's clearly the focus of considerable investment. Many companies have on their website that this is an aim. And 6 years ago, no one was anticipating, I think, that we would have reached this place. A series of high-profile figures in the tech industry have issued warnings about the risks of general AI. Last night, I was at a dinner in Parliament hosted by Control AI, a coalition of groups who believe the existential risks are so great that there needs to be a concentrated attempt to lobby governments about them and to anticipate these developments and to pause research and development beyond a certain frontier. Definitions vary, of course, about how we will know when we have general AI and what it is, and estimates vary on when, not if, general AI is likely to arrive. But the latest estimates at the dinner last night from a group of people working in the field are between 2 and 10 years, erring on the former. So the time available for precautionary action is shrinking, and the risk of existential crisis accelerating. The technology companies are presenting a radically different vision of the future on which the faith communities together and separately will need to comment, and for which we need a much better network of collaboration and leadership. These developments and this inflection point create, I think, a fourfold agenda for faith communities in responding to the developments of technology and AI in particular. The first is the development of shared ethical approaches to what are becoming near universal questions about AI development. The second, the development of a shared vision of human-centered ethical precautionary deployment of AI across a number of specific and defined fields, narrow AI. The third is the development of combined advocacy with civil society on what is one of the major debates of our times, just as we develop combined advocacy for the climate crisis. And that needs to be an advocacy which carries a global perspective. And the fourth, which I'll spend the remainder of the time on, is the development of a fuller and richer picture into this conversation of what it means to be human and of human flourishing, going back to the Earth horizon picture. So I think it's imperative on faith communities not to surrender the conversation to technologists. The ethics of AI need to be embedded within a rich vision of what it means to be human in a society which is flourishing for the good of all. As I listen to some conversations among technologists, the high point of what it means to be human is to reach a point where the Wi-Fi works, where Deliveroo brings the food on time, and Netflix chooses my next AI-generated video. In reality, my humanity is being reduced to being a passive, inactive, isolated consumer. I think we need to bring into the conversation a sense of the positive, of wonder, of what a remarkable thing it is to be alive, to be human in this amazing world. For hearts and minds to be stirred by beauty, by love, by endeavor. To return to the picture of Earth from the moon, this is where the deeper lessons of discovery and exploration strike, in giving a perspective and a context of what it means to be human. Despite the wonders of protein folding or gene analysis, a data center does not stir the spirit in the same way as a sunset or that beautiful picture of a mother and baby we saw a few minutes ago. So just allow me to share two insights from Christian faith and tradition, which I believe are helpful to the generation of this wider ethical context and the specific challenges of AI. The first is what I believe is the Christian faith's most significant contribution to the exploration of our common humanity, is the remarkable, profound belief that Almighty God, creator of heaven and earth, became a person in Jesus Christ, sharing our weaknesses and mortality, modeling service and love at the heart of human identity, to redeem the world and to forge a single new humanity from all the nations. So although the Gospels never mention the digital world, of course, they're a remarkable contemporary source for Christian ethics and AI. And second, core to Christian faith and to the other Abrahamic traditions represented here is the concept of discipleship. Jesus calls women and men to follow, to pattern our lives on his life. Discipleship has many different dimensions. Pope Francis called in 2016 for a new environmental conversion in his great encyclical Laudato Si', a new commitment to environmental discipleship. It seems to me that we need a new call now to Christians and to all people of faith to explore digital discipleship, how our faith is worked out in a digital world in fruitful relationship with the rest of our lives. Only so can the faith communities support their own communities and speak to the rest of the world with integrity and with conviction. Thank you.
Thank you. So, questions?
Thank you very much. I'm Francis Martin from the Church Times newspaper. One of the things you mentioned was the need for sort of everyone to engage in this conversation. You talked about parish priests as well as having a lead bishop on this subject. I just wondered from that whether there was sort of pastoral issues being created by AI that you've come across. Obviously, you're engaging at perhaps the sort of forum conference level, but on the sort of in people's lives, what kind of struggles are being created. And I wonder what the church can do, and perhaps society more widely can do, to help equip people to deal with those challenges.
Yeah, thank you, Francis. So lots, I think, really. We brought 100 young people into a residential clergy conference we did last year and spent some time in groups listening to these 16, 17-year-olds about their concerns about the world and life and faith. And I was surprised at top of their concerns. So for young people in all of our churches and faith communities, The questions of will I have a job? What is the future going to look like? How do I manage my relationship with social media is key. For people who are the generation of my own children, it is when do I get my kids a mobile phone? That's a discipleship question. How do we respond to social media? I think for adults of every generation, how do we regulate our own input with technology, which social media platforms is appropriate to use? As Beth was saying, a lot of people have withdrawn from X. A lot of churches are now withdrawing from X. And then people are also coming across very sharp dilemmas in their work if they're encountering AI, and whether they're teachers, university lecturers, encountering plagiarism. It's a ubiquitous question now. And as churches, we're right at the beginning of being able to equip people to answer those questions.
Thank you for that excellent lecture. I'm Father Joseph Laracy. I'm a Catholic priest and a chair of systematic theology at Seton Hall University in the United States. One thing I've been thinking about in recent years is how Catholic social teaching can be applied as an ethical framework to address AI concerns. And I think that a lot of the principles, I would say all the principles, would be shared in the broader Christian church, certainly in the Anglican Communion, principles of human dignity, solidarity, subsidiarity, care of creation. What are your thoughts about how this social tradition, which has, of course, been deployed broadly with the EU treaty, with in the United States, with the Bill of Rights and other documents, how it might be fruitfully applied with emerging AI risks and ethical questions?
Thank you. I think my perspective would be, like yours, that it's an immensely rich tradition on which to draw, and it's been distilled over many years and is reasonably accessible as well. And as churches, we need to find the capacity and the courage to draw those resources into the wider debate. And in that regard, I would pay immense tribute to Pope Francis for the considerable work he's done on AI, and I hope that Pope Leo will continue that work. And I think it's probably through the work of the Vatican that we're going to get a global alignment of faith communities around this question, as it was for climate change with Laudato Si. But they are very accessible traditions, and they do undergird. And it took me a while to realize, when I first began to explore this field, that actually the technology doesn't require a new ethics. It requires the translation of existing ethics and values across to the digital world and the digital sphere. And what we're seeing is a lot of these tools being developed without that foundation on a libertarian or aethical basis.
Thank you so much for your talk. You mentioned the kind of existential concerns for the question of being human, and you didn't, obviously you covered a lot of things, you didn't go elaborate too much on that. You did mention about the kind of concern of kind of a consumerism and a kind of desensitization. And I wonder, my question is, does AI present a new type or kind of existential question about being human, or does it just heighten the existing ones that we have?
Thank you. I think I've spent 8 years out of the 9 I've been engaging with this, saying the problem isn't artificial general intelligence. It is much more the application of narrow artificial intelligence in ways which go beyond human awareness and civil dialogue and understanding. And I still think those questions are really important. I have now to take seriously the warnings that are being given by those who say we are close to artificial general intelligence, and the consequences of that. I'm still retaining, a degree of wanting to question and to be skeptical, but the numbers of people who are saying it, the numbers of people who are opting out of this research in order to join the chorus of those who are saying, be careful in humanity, the kind of safeguards being proposed by Stuart Russell and others working in the field. I think we have to take these existential questions really seriously. I completely agree with Beth that a lot of them are, a lot of the mythology that's being constructed is drawing on apocalyptic mythologies and ways of framing questions. But I do think the dangers have to be taken seriously, and the governments should be taking them seriously.
We'll take one from that side, yeah.
Thank you for an excellent presentation, Chris Rees. 2 or 3 questions, if I may. One is, you talked about the I can't remember your exact phrase, but the ethical stance of the leading companies, the Magic 7. For my money, there isn't any. They seem to be pursuing their own economic benefit to the exclusion of any morality, any guardrails, and seeking to influence government, and Mr. Trump seems to be helping them. So is that really going on, or am I being too cynical?
Thank you. My impression is it's a mixture, and actually there's always an ethical stance, even if it's more negative than positive, by default. And I think I've seen a journey of not really thinking about ethics to embracing high-level ethical statements to risking ethics washing and then some actually quite good work being done across individual sectors. I mean, the UK took the decision around about 8 years ago now that actually the core of AI regulation had to be sector-specific in law and finance and so on. And I don't think our financial technology and legal technology industries would have developed without good ethical frameworks which are broadly consistent with the ethical practice of those professions. So I think at that level, there's quite a lot to be encouraged about. I agree at the level of the multinational technology companies that I think they're ranged on a spectrum and therefore they're not uniform, but I would be very glad to see a much greater increase of awareness there.
Question at the end there.
Hi, I actually work in human flourishing. I'm a clinical psychologist and psychotherapist. You used the words humans will become passive, inactive, isolated. I would add silenced to that in an AI sphere. And it seems like there's AI and we kind of tagging behind it. How do you think we can leapfrog ahead of it when we are looking at empowering people in this field and educating people in this field so that they're not so passive and silenced and that more people can have a voice to shape and create the space in which they can flourish?
Thank you. I think that's a really important and a really good question. I think I would say that faith communities, deep philosophical traditions, all have a part to play, because if the AI becomes the strongest influence on a social group or an individual, and there's an absence of personal ethics and values and identity, then it is going to be overwhelming. And we will only find resistance by digging more deeply into our traditions. And this comes at a particularly these developments come probably not accidentally at a particular moment in the story of faith and society and secularism, both in Britain and in the United States and elsewhere in Europe, when those traditions are much weaker than they have historically been. I think that creates an impetus for our faith communities actually to pay attention to the need to do this intentionally and to form people in deeper values. There needs to be a balancing.
So one final question.
Thank you. So, in general, I think that AI can be seen as just trying to optimize for some well-defined objective. And I guess a lot of these I mean, rather than trying to kind of halt progress completely, which maybe is a bit infeasible at this moment, if we were able to find objectives that we could define formally or well enough, and we could suggest what those were, maybe that would help. But I don't often hear too much about what those might be or how we might come to those. I don't know if you have any thoughts on that.
Yeah, no, thank you. I asked a similar question at this dinner last night with Control AI, and clearly the responses are only developing to those questions are only developing in dialogue with the technology. But I was encouraged to think that work was being done, and that there's work being done on what are the things that would need to be restricted in any international decisions to hold back on AI development, and also the companies developing general AI are taking a range of different views on the ethics of doing so. And so there is some thought happening in the better companies, from my perspective, about how that happens. But it's quite difficult to access at this point, I think.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Stephen.